This morning, there's a new report that shows attacks on Catholic churches in America are up. According to Catholic Vote, nearly half the crimes happened following the Supreme Court decision to overturn federal abortion rights. There are crimes like this one in Escondido, a man seen multiple times causing thousands of dollars of damage, breaking in, hurling trash at a statue of the Virgin Mary, destroying a cross and a glass door. Now, earlier this month in Arkansas, there was a man who destroyed a church altar with a sledgehammer, and he also stole several relics. And last month, marble statues were knocked over and 2 were destroyed at a parish outside of Philadelphia. Joining me right now is the executive director and CEO of Relevant Radio, Father Rocky. Good morning to you, Father Rocky. Do you believe all of this vandalism is being tied to the abortion rights issue, or is this just a sign of the times?
Well, it's partly the sign of the times, Adrienne. It really started in the summer of 2020 when we had a lot of violence in our country. And not only were Catholic churches attacked back then, but they started toppling down statues in public squares, Christopher Columbus, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, all that. But since the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade back in June, yes, there has been an acceleration on attacks of Catholic churches in this country. I think it's simmered down right now. It's not totally surprising because Roe versus Wade and abortion in our country has been a big issue for the last 50 years. And Americans are passionate about their politics, and sometimes they take it out on innocent victims and things of that sort. So not a complete surprise. Putting it in context, I think the report said 300 churches have been vandalized. That's about 2% of the Catholic Church buildings in this country. It's a concern, but I think it's simmering down now.
You think it's simmering down? I mean, in terms of the political climate we're in, you mentioned 2020 and how much life has changed. But is there a spiritual aspect, do you think, to these crimes?
Oh, I think there certainly is a spiritual aspect to that. So an attack on a church or a sacred item usually means somebody is angry at God. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened in history, right? Jonah in the Old Testament is angry with God because God wanted to do some work and he tried to avoid that. So there's always a spiritual aspect there. And since the very beginning of the world, there's been a struggle between good and bad, darkness and light, life and death. So certainly there's a spiritual aspect there. And I think as Christians, the first thing we're called to do is forgive these people. Second, the local churches should increase their security with cameras and locks and all that. And thirdly, I would think public officials ought to prosecute these attacks so that there's peace in the community, whether it be against a church or against whatever it is. You know, we have these challenges, as you know, in Chicago in terms of violence, and it's a real concern going into the elections.
Well, there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of vitriol being spewed, whether it's on social media or, sadly, these vandals at churches. But for those who are in or out of the church and they're angry at God, maybe because of unanswered prayers, what would you say to them?
You know, I usually tell people when they tell me they're angry with God, I said, that's okay. He understands. He's got this. What you're dealing here is with what we call the mystery of the cross and suffering. And often as a priest, I've had to counsel people who are upset or vexed or things like that. I'll say, look, the key to happiness in life is to have low expectations. Right. So if you can foster a spirit of gratitude for the things that you have, you can walk, you can talk, you have a job, you have people in your life, then you can focus on the positive. I think it's a common human condition that people often get stuck in the negative, and that gets them very upset. Right. It's a spiritual battle everyone has on any given day.
Well, I have to give this stat really quickly. Though we're out of time, 50 years ago, 90% of Americans identified as Christian. And then in 2020, that number was only 64%, with Pew Research predicting the number will go down. In one sentence, can you tell me what your message would be to the faithful?
My message would be to the faithful, thank God every day for what you have, and it'll put you in a much better attitude and draw you closer to God.
Especially in these turbulent times we're in. Father Rocky, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Adrienne.
That's great advice. It's something I know I do every day, and it really does help you have the right mentality to start your day.
Gratitude is a universal religion in a sense. You know what I mean? It's not a religion, but people all over the world know that gratitude works. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.